here. So we are delighted to have Sara Papa back to join us for a virtual presentation on falls prevention. She has a lot of credentials, including a PhD in this subject, and just tremendous resources and energy that she brings. And I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to her so she can get us started.
Thank you, Laura. It's a pleasure to be here today. And so my name is Sara Papa, and I'm an assistant professor in the Health and Human Performance Department at Marymount University right here in Arlington. And back in 2016, before I was there, Marymount applied for and received a federal grant to do falls prevention programming in Northern Virginia. They got together with some community partners and decided that at the time there were no evidence-based falls prevention programs going on in our region, and they wanted to change that. So they applied for and received an initial round of funding. In 2018, by 2018, I had joined Marymount, and we applied for a second round of funding, which was to be 3 years of additional funds to continue our work in falls prevention awareness in the area. And because of COVID, that grant has actually lasted us 5 years. So we're still spending that second round of funding. It comes to an end of this June. We have applied for a third round of funding, and we're just right now, as we're giving this presentation, waiting to see if we're going to get funding for another few years to continue our work. But Marymount University recently opened a Center for Optimal Aging, and through that center, our falls prevention work will continue whether we get the new grant or not. But most of my career has been in public health, local public health, both at here in Virginia as well as in Ohio. I've been a full-time faculty member at Marymount for 5 years, and I'm very excited to be here. So let's get started. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about why falls prevention is important. We're going to look at what some of the major risk factors are for falling. We're going to talk for a few minutes about how balance is related to falls. And then finally, we're going to talk about what we can do to decrease our risk of a fall. So I always ask people when I give this presentation, as I go through this presentation, think about yourself, perhaps other people that you live with, families, members, and friends. And as we talk about what some of the risk factors are for a fall, I would challenge you to start thinking about things in your own life that maybe you need to change or pay attention to help decrease your risk of a fall. I always also like to start off just talking a little bit about optimal aging, especially since Marymount has that new Center for Optimal Aging. Is age just a number? We think so. So optimal aging is the capacity to function across many domains: physical, functional, cognitive, emotional, social, and spiritual, to one's satisfaction and in spite of one's medical conditions. So thinking about this definition, right, to one's satisfaction, right? So we want people to be able to do the things that they want to do, right? Not the things their neighbor wants to do, not the things their family member wants them to do, the things they themselves want to do. So if somebody wants to be able to carry their own groceries, they want to be able to get on the floor or play with their grandkids, they want to be able to continue walking their dog, right? Those are the even live in their own home, right? So these are things that people want to be able to do for themselves. And then in spite of one's medical conditions, right? We know that as we get older, our risk for many chronic diseases increases. Most people who are 65 or older have one or more chronic conditions. That doesn't mean we can't all still strive to reach our own personal, individual level of optimal aging or optimal health. So just something to think and keep in the back of your mind that despite any conditions that you might have, despite any limitations you might have, right, we're all striving for that optimal health, optimal fitness, optimal aging. Why is falls prevention important? Falls are the leading cause of injury and injury-related death for people over the age of 65. So that's important, right? And as we get older, we hear a lot more about falls. We hear a lot more about falls prevention. And that's because age is a risk factor, right? It's one of those risk factors that we can't do anything about. But leading cause of injuries and injury-related deaths for people over the age of 65 makes falls prevention very important. The most serious injuries that we see from a fall are head trauma and hip fractures. In 2018, over 8 million falls required medical attention and over 850,000 hospitalizations. That's a lot of people. The average hospitalization due to a fall is around between $13,000 and $15,000. So that's a lot of money having to be spent for just one fall. And those are just the falls we know of, right? We know that everybody falls, people of all ages fall, right? We know that. What happens though as we get older is that risk for an injury or even a serious injury increases. So not all falls are reported, we know that, right? So on this slide, we're really just talking about the falls that were reported, right? The person had to call the fire department or had to go to the emergency room or had to go to the hospital for treatment. Over $50 billion in medical care costs spent on falls each year, and that number is going up. Why is that number going up? Because the number of people over the age of 65 is going up, right? So, we are going to see that number increase just because the sheer number of people in that age group is growing. And in 2018, more than 32,000 older adults died as a result of complications from a fall. So we share these statistics just because we want to reinforce that it is an important topic. It's an important topic for people, in my opinion, for people of all ages, but certainly becomes more important as we age. Some of the implications of falls, when we think about the injury, that the person gets injured, they might not be able to do some of their daily activities. They might have to go to the hospital, right? They might incur some of that $50 billion we talked about in healthcare costs. But having a fall can increase your feelings of social isolation. You might not be able to do the things you like to do for a few days or a few weeks or even longer. You might, start having a fear of falling, right? And you might start self-imposing some restrictions on what you're doing. You might lose time from work, or a friend or family member might lose time from work. And so overall, we see reduced quality of life, even if it's in the short term. And it could also, end up in reduced feelings of independence. So it's not just that healthcare dollar that we're talking about when we talk about falls, but also some of these psychosocial impacts as well. So what are some of the age-related changes that happen to us as we get older, right? And we're all sort of aware of these as we're getting older, but decreased step height. Okay, so your legs might be weaker, right? Our muscles do get weaker as we get older. And so not being able to lift your knee high enough, right? So that your foot clears that stair or clears that curb if you're outside. So just not having the strength to lift our leg high enough to clear, again, that curb or step or other thing that you might be walking on. Our movements are slower, right? Our reaction time is slower. We might have decreased motion or sensation in our ankle, right? So I think when I gave this talk at the church the other day, we all started doing some foot circles just as we were sitting there, right? Because we were like, oh yes, I should be moving my feet in circles a couple times a day, especially if you've been sitting for a while. That forward flexed posture, sometimes as we get older, we start to lean forward a little bit as we walk, and that shifts our center of gravity forward, which actually increases our risk for a fall. If we trip, we trip on something, right? Our body is already sort of leaning forward, and that shift in our center of gravity increases our risk for a fall. And I mentioned weakening of our leg muscles, just not being able to do what we used to be able to do. We talked about a couple of these. So decreased responsiveness in our sensory receptors. For example, our feet, right? If we're walking outside and we hit a crack in the sidewalk, right? Our foot feels that, right? But we have to have sensation in our foot in order to feel that. And so, if our foot notices that there's a crack in the sidewalk, right? It might send a message to the rest of my brain and tell my brain to put my other foot out so that I don't fall. Okay, and we'll talk about that again when we get to the section on balance. But just thinking that if your senses aren't working quite as well as they used to, right? And you see the next bullet point, visual contrast, even hearing, right? Even if we lose some of our hearing, right? All of our senses work together to help inform our brain of what's happening, and then our brain can decide if it needs to send a message out for us to do something, right? You start to fall, put your hands out. It's not something that we think about, right? That's an instinct that as soon as our brain gets information saying you're about to fall, right? Our hands go out. And so anything that disrupts that pathway, or anything that disrupts that message from getting to the brain, can increase our risk for a fall. It's taking increased time for near, far, or light dark adaptation. If you're inside on a nice sunny day like today and you step outside, if you don't have sunglasses on, you might need a minute or two for your eyes to adjust to that light difference. And so that if there are stairs that you need to navigate, you might need to wait until your eyes adjust. Oops. Oh my, don't know how that happened. Let me go backwards here. And increased urgency to use the restroom, right? Sometimes we don't go to the bathrooms when we should, and so we hold it, and then we really have to go. And so that feeling of having to get to the bathroom quickly can cause us to rush or even start to walk quickly or run. And of course, that could increase our risk for a fall. The good news is we do know that while falls are common, for the most part, falls are predictable and they are preventable, right? So sometimes I pause for a minute, let people think about that. Oh, falls are predictable. We should be able to predict them, and they're preventable. Falls are not an inevitable part of aging. Just because we are getting older does not mean we're going to fall. And so that's a big thing I like to remind people, right? Just because we're getting older does not mean we're going to fall. But we also know that falls are not typically caused by just one issue. Frequently, there's more than one thing that might be going on to increase someone's risk for a fall. Can we decrease our risk for a fall? Yes, we can. That's the good news, right? We have some good news in this talk about falls and getting older, but it takes work, right? There are things we can do and things that we should do every day and things that we should do several times a week to help decrease our risk of a fall. And it's not the kind of thing that we can just do it once and forget about it, or do it for a couple of weeks and then say, okay, I decreased my risk for a fall. Now I don't have to worry about it anymore. There are things that we really need to do for the rest of our lives to help prevent that fall. It means we pay attention to what some of our risk factors are, which I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, and just reminding yourself that most falls are preventable with just a little bit. Sometimes it's a little pre-planning. Sometimes it might be spending a little bit of time in your home looking at things that might cause a trip hazard, as well as things within yourself that could increase that risk. So let's talk about some of those risks. This first slide shares things that are intrinsic or personal to you, right? So these are individual things that could increase someone's risk for a fall. We've already mentioned age. Age is a risk factor, does increase our risk. Having fallen previously increases your risk for a fall. So once we've had a fall, we're actually at an increased risk for another fall. And people ask me, why is that? And if you think about it, people, once they've had a fall, and particularly if they had an injury or if it was a serious fall, they start to act differently. They start to walk differently. Their behavior is a little bit different. A lot of times people who have had a fall stop going to their exercise class, or they stop going to church. They stop meeting their friends for lunch. And so because they've stopped doing some of those activities that they used to do, they actually lose some of their fitness. They lose some of their muscle strength. So that can sort of have a snowball effect in terms of increasing someone's risk. I mentioned muscle weakness earlier, gait or balance problems. If something changes in the way you walk, or maybe you're taking a medication, and so that has changed the way you feel, or changed, that you now feel dizzy sometimes, or maybe when you take a medication, you feel dizzy for the first couple of hours, and it could affect your balance. Poor or reduced vision or hearing. I mentioned that a few minutes ago when we were talking about our senses. If you have, of course, vision makes sense, right? If you can't see something, you might trip over it. So vision makes sense, but also hearing. People don't think about hearing as an as an implication for a fall, but again, it's another sense that we have that's helping to tell our brain where we are in space. And it helps to tell our brain if we need to do something, right? Oh, you're sliding, you're slipping, you need to do something, right? So all of our senses contribute to that. A fear of falling, and this really ties in with having fallen previously, but if you have a fear that you're going to fall, that increases your risk of falling. And it sort of all ties back together with you're behaving differently, perhaps you're taking smaller steps. There's just some things in our behavior that really could increase our risk. And the biggest thing is just really some self-imposed limitations on our activities and what we're doing that contribute to that. Postural hypotension, if you have low blood pressure, particularly if you're going from laying down to seated or from seated to standing, sometimes people need to just take a few extra moments, right? When you first sit up in bed, sit on the bed for half a minute or a minute, then stand up, and then maybe stand there for another minute before you start walking. Again, these are things that you should know about yourself if you have any of these risk factors, just things to pay attention to. Decreased sensation in your feet, which I mentioned earlier. Feet are really important if you think about it. They hit the ground first, and if there's something slippery or wet or uneven, right? A lot of times your foot is the first thing that notices that. And so your foot is really important, as well as that, ankle mobility to help stabilize you if you do land on some ground that's a little bit uneven. Vertigo, if you have some vertigo or any other sort of balance or imbalance issues, particularly in your inner ear, something to think about. And I mentioned medication. We actually will talk again about medication in a couple of minutes. Just going to take a quick sip of water. Okay, so those are internal risk factors. So this slide talks about what we would call external risk factors, things around your home or community, your neighborhood. Things like hand railings on stairs, bathroom grab bars. So again, think about your own home. Do you have stairs? Do you have railings on both sides of your stairs? Do you have grab bars that are needed in your bathroom? Or lighting. Do you have an area in your home that maybe a light bulb has burnt out and you have not gotten around to changing it yet? Or maybe your light bulbs need to be brighter, right? If our vision is shifting as we get older, we might need to think about brighter light bulbs in certain parts of our home. Clutter, one of my favorite things to talk about is clutter. Thinking about your own home. Do you have areas of your home or rooms of your home where you might have clutter, too much stuff? That's sort of one of the assignments I'll give you when we get towards the end is, kind of walking room by room through your house and looking for things in each room that could cause a trip. Any kind of a trip hazard, uneven sidewalks, things in your home. A lot of times people mention threshold, right? Stepping over threshold from one room to another room. If you have a sunken room, if it go from your kitchen to your living room and there's a one step, thinking about areas of your home where there could be a trip hazard. Mentioned slippery surfaces, right? We didn't have too much ice this winter, but snowy or ice, rain, wet leaves can be wet. Slippery surfaces in your kitchen and your bathroom, right? If you have any areas in those rooms that get wet. Shoe choice. I always talk about shoes, thinking about your shoes, making sure that your shoes are appropriate and designed for the activity that you're going to be doing. So if you're going to be outside walking, wearing shoes that are designed for walking. Making sure that your shoes fit well, that they're in good repair. And again, shoe that you should be wearing based on what if you're hiking, right, versus out dancing versus walking. I always cringe when I see people out in flip-flops and Crocs or that type of shoe, particularly if they're, trying to navigate an escalator or navigate getting on and off the metro. So yeah, think about your shoes. Throw rugs. Throw rugs are also sort of a big no-no in the falls prevention world. we just recommend getting rid of them. They're very dangerous. If you have throw rugs that you really can't part with, one thing you can do is buy some of that double-sided tape and put it around the edge of your throw rug, and that can help keep you from tripping or hitting the edge of that and pulling it up and tripping. Small pets and toddlers can also get underfoot. So just, again, something to be aware of if you have small pets or toddlers in your life. Thinking about making sure that if you're standing somewhere in the kitchen on the counter and you're going to go move over to the sink, right? Is that toddler or pet, has that toddler or pet moved behind your feet? And using the cell phone, I actually have another slide about this as well. And that is not doing more than one thing at a time, right? We are not good at we are not good at multitasking. We should not be multitasking. So if you're walking your dog, perhaps you're carrying groceries, right, and talking on the phone. We don't want things like that to happen, right? No. Did my screen just disappear for a minute? Okay, I'm going to forge onward.
I can see your screen. It's
Okay, thank
only
you.
community hazards. Yeah. And then
Okay.
medicines.
Yeah, I got
Yeah.
thank you. I got a message that said screen sharing had paused. Okay. Medications. I was trying to move this bar out of my way. Medications that might make you feel tired or lightheaded. I mentioned that earlier. Some blood pressure medications or heart medicines can make you feel dizzy or tired. Certainly medications that we take to help us sleep. Certain pain medications. So any of these can potentially make you feel tired or lightheaded. And of course, that would in turn increase your risk for a fall. And, if there's a medication that you've been taking for many years, as we get older, what happens? Our bodies change. And so that same medication that you've been taking for many years might not be affecting you the same way, or it might be affecting you a little bit differently. There might be side effects that when you were younger didn't bother you, and as you're getting older, you're noticing more side effects from the same medications. Or you might have a dosage change in one of your medications, or you might have a new medication added. So anytime there's a change in your medication, we just recommend people think about it, make sure your healthcare provider or a pharmacist knows all the medications that you're taking, because as we get older, as we get to be 65 and older, many people are taking one or more medications. Rushing or multitasking, right? This is that extra slide. I finally just decided my presentation needed, because people always mention it, trying to do more than one thing at a time. And so this is where that most falls are preventable comes into play, right? Thinking about what you're trying to do. Is there a better way to do it? Is there a safer way to do it? For example, you're at the top of your stairs and you have a laundry basket and you're about to walk down the stairs. Is there a better way to get that laundry basket down the stairs? Could you walk in front of the laundry basket and just sort of drag it down your stairs? I've had people share with me that they use either a laundry bag or even a trash bag that they put dirty laundry in, and then they can just toss it down the stairs ahead of them, and then they can walk safely down the stairs so that they're not trying to carry that down the stairs. Again, if you have to get out of bed at night to use the restroom, think about your pathway from your bed to your bathroom. Because it's going to be dark, you might not be fully awake. You might feel like you need to get to the bathroom quickly. So is the pathway clear? Do you have night lights along the way? Do you need to even just leaving a light on, maybe leaving a hallway light on, for example? And again, trying not to do too many things at one time. People always, and I'm guilty of this, right? You want to make it from the car into your house with one trip. So you have 8 grocery bags in each hand, right? Because you want to do it in one trip. But that, increases your risk for an injury. So, make 2 or 3 trips so that you're not as weighed down with groceries. Rushing to answer the phone or the door. So just, again, taking a minute or two to think about what you're about to do. And is this safe for me to do this? Or is there a safer way to get this task done? And in some cases, it might mean asking somebody else to do it for you, like change a light bulb. climb up on a step ladder and change a light bulb. You might not be the best person for that task, right? And so asking a family member, a friend, or a neighbor to help you do something if need be. So now we're going to talk for a few minutes about balance and how balance relates to falls prevention. So what is balance? Balance is your ability to control your center of gravity over your base of support in any given environment. So thinking about the person, right? Balance is this interaction between the person, the task that they're doing, and the environment. And so any one of those three things changes, right? Then that risk for a fall changes. So right now, right, I'm sitting in a chair, right? So it's me, Sarah. My task is I'm sitting in the chair, and the environment is I'm inside my home, right? So there's no wind, there's no sun, there's no rain, right? Nothing is happening. I'm sitting in a chair, and so I'm very balanced, right? Because my chair has a nice wide base of support. I'm not feeling dizzy right now, right? So I'm pretty stable right now. My balance is good. But if that were to change, if I were to stand up and start walking, then my task has changed. Still me, still inside my house, but now I'm walking, right? So now my risk goes up a tiny bit because I'm moving. And when we're moving, right, we're walking, the risk is I could trip on something. And the individual, again, what's the person's age? What are some of those other internal risk factors that they might have? And the environment, right? What shoes am I wearing? Am I inside? Am I outside? Am I wearing reading glasses trying to go up and down the stairs, which is also very hazardous? Many of you have tried to wear reading glasses while you're doing something around the house. It's not smart. So again, those are the three things that interact during balance. So again, we want to try to maintain that center of gravity over our base of support. And we want to be able to react to routine movement, right? Things that we know are happening. Maybe I'm walking, maybe I'm in an exercise class, or I'm going up and down stairs, right? Those are routine things. I'm used to them. I know how to balance. Or unexpected changes or challenges, which might mean you slip, or perhaps you're walking in the store, you're at a crowded venue and you get pushed from behind, right? That's an unexpected challenge to your balance. And so we're going to talk about some ways we can help to improve our balance to help us manage those more unexpected challenges. I sort of talked a little bit about this earlier, but maintaining balance, right? Our brain is very important in maintaining our balance. And so our bodies, right? Our hearing, our vision, our sense of touch, all is taking in information all the time, telling our brain what's happening, right? We're not thinking about this. Fortunately, it happens automatically. And your brain is constantly sending out information if something needs to change. So if I do trip, right, if my right foot trips on something, right, that message goes to my brain immediately sends the message out to my other foot and says, hurry up, take a step so that you don't fall, right? Or it might say, hurry up, put your hands out, you're about to fall. Grab onto something, you're about to fall. So if anything in that process is not working properly, if my foot has decreased sensation and I didn't notice that I stepped on that crack, right, or my brain might have some impairment, maybe some mild cognitive impairment, for example, or something's not working in that circuit, the message doesn't go out to my other foot to say, hurry up and take a step. And then I fall because the message, somewhere in that pathway, the message didn't get through, right? Message did not go from my foot that hit the crack up to my brain. My brain did not then send the message out in time for my other foot to move to prevent the fall. So again, anything in this three-step process that is altered, then we're at an increased risk. And then finally, sort of, again, our senses taking in information, telling our brain where we are in space and what we're doing. Our eyes, our inner ear, even our neck, our joints, right? Our wrist, even our lower limbs, soles of our feet, palms of our hand, taking in information and letting our body know if we need to do something different, right? If we need to hurry up and do something because you're about to fall. So again, all of these systems work together to send those messages to your brain. What prevents us from acting quickly as we get older? We've talked about a few of these. Our muscles get weaker. Our reflexes are perhaps slower. We lose some endurance, right? Again, we have good news from this muscle weakness and endurance, and that is we can do things to help prevent that. Dual task complexity, which I mentioned, trying to do more than one thing at a time. Again, preventable, right? Oh, I shouldn't have been doing all three of those things at one time, right? I need to slow down, do one of these things at a time. So let me finish doing that, and then I'll go over here and do this. Low functioning of your vision or your vestibular, your proprioception systems, which we just talked about when we were talking about balance. Cognitive impairments. If we have a cognitive impairment, that can help, that can impair our ability to react quickly. Lack of sleep. I think everyone can comprehend what happens if we don't get enough sleep and we don't feel well. We're a little bit sluggish, right? So our reaction time is down. We're not lifting our feet high enough. And then, as I mentioned a few slides ago, some of the things related to medication that can increase our risk. So not so good news, right, is that we do have these changes that happen as we get older. And we can't do anything about our age, at least not yet. Science hasn't gotten to that point yet. So our reaction time goes down. We do lose some muscle and bone strength as we get older. But the good news is, in almost all cases, we can improve our balance. We can maintain muscle mass. We can even increase muscle mass. We can increase our fitness level. We can increase our endurance and improve our balance. Now, does it happen quickly? No. Does it happen all at once? We only have to do one thing one time? No, of course not. As I said at the top of the talk as well, we need to do these things for the rest of our life, but we can make these improvements at any age. Age does not matter when we talk about these things that we can do to help prevent a fall. So what are some of those things we can do? We talk about 5 strategies, and these sort of all encompass some of the things that we've been talking about today. First one, get a medication review, right? Have your physician or a nurse practitioner, pharmacist, look at your medication. And we recommend that once a year, particularly if you start feeling differently from taking a medication you've been taking, or if you have been given a new medication. A gait and balance assessment. And this is something that any healthcare provider can do. And there are actually materials on CDC's website that show some very easy to implement gait and balance assessments, as well as a falls risk screening that actually anybody could do on anybody else. You don't even need special equipment. Vision and hearing checks annually. A home safety evaluation. There are companies that will actually come out to your home and do a home safety evaluation, and they go room by room and they look for things that could increase your risk for a fall. And it might be just an uneven floor. It could be the hand railings, grab bars. It could be something as simple as moving some furniture around. Might mean fixing some stairs. Maybe you have stairs outside that need to be repaired, but just some things around your home, making sure that your home is safe. And then strength and balance exercises. And that's really where those of us on this team at Marymount have been spending a lot of our efforts, and that is implementing evidence-based falls prevention programs throughout the region. Doesn't have to be one of our programs, right? Any regular exercise program that incorporates cardiovascular fitness, some strength, some endurance, and some flexibility will give you what you need to help prevent that fall. But increasing and or maintaining fitness level probably will have the biggest impact on preventing a fall. So in summary, what do we want to do here, right? We want to strengthen balance exercises. So join an exercise class if you're not in one right now. Also walking. Walking is great because you're having to balance when you walk, right? When you walk, you are maintaining your balance while moving. Right? So that's good. That's good practice. It's also good for your cardiovascular fitness. It's also good for your endurance. So maintain a fitness level, some sort of fitness. Getting regular checkups, right? That annual physical, talked about eye and ear exams. We talked about medication review. And then going through your home. And this also might include your neighborhood, other places where you frequent. Are there things in your home that pose a trip hazard? Throw rugs or clutter, electrical cords. We don't have too many issues with electrical cords. I feel like most things that need to be plugged in can be right near an outlet. But you might have some spots in your house where that needs to be looked at. Grab bars, hand railings. If you're going to have grab bars installed in your bathrooms, we highly recommend that you use a skilled person, a skilled handy person to do that for you. It's important that grab bars be placed appropriately. And certainly the ones with the suction cup are not recommended. They're not sturdy enough and stable enough in the event that you were to need them. And light bulbs, right? Are there areas in your home where it's just a little bit dark and you think either I need a lamp or you need brighter light bulbs? Just a few tips, things that you can do. I mentioned the CDC earlier, and they have a great section on their website, and it's called the STEADY program. And that stands for Stopping Elderly Accidents, Deaths, and Injuries. And it's really all about reducing a risk for a fall. And as you can see here, they have materials for healthcare providers, materials for patients, which really should just say materials for general community, and success stories. This is where you can find information on if you wanted to read about how you could even, do a little fitness falls risk screening on yourself, right? Or with a friend or family member. Lots of great information on CDC's website. They have 3 or 4 really great brochures on falls prevention. And this is one, it's called Check for Safety, a home fall prevention checklist for older adults. This brochure is available free on their website as a PDF. And this is when you open the brochure, this is what the inside looks like. And it's really sort of a little home assessment, right? A home safety checklist for you. So it takes you through some of the rooms in your home, the areas of your home. It says, these are some things that you should look for. So again, available right on the CDC website. Just again, giving you some things to think about as you think about your home safety and your risk for a fall. Additional resources, National Institute on Aging has a great website on physical activity. And then the National Council on Aging also has a very robust falls prevention section on their website. Lots and lots of great materials for both family members, caregivers, as well as older adults and healthcare providers. So I mentioned that as part of our grant, Marymount is implementing 3 evidence-based falls prevention programs. And on this NCOA website, you should be able to search by zip code, or at least by a county or city through local area agencies on aging to find where some of these programs are being offered. In our region, we're implementing programs called SAIL, which is a traditional 60-minute aerobics class that incorporates specific strength and balance exercises. It's a program called Matter of Balance, which is a support group. It's an 8-week program designed to help the person who has that fear of falling, and because of that, they've stopped doing some of their regular activities. And then the third program we're implementing right now is called Otago, and that's a program designed for the more frail person. It incorporates walking with some strength and balance exercises as well. So again, on this website, you can find more information about these evidence-based programs. We're implementing these because why? Well, if it's evidence-based, that means it's been researched and proven to work. And so if you take a program that's evidence-based, it pretty much will do what you want it to do. And in our case, helps reduce that risk for a fall. So sort of putting all of this together, and I alluded to this at the beginning of my talk, right? Start thinking about your own risk factors, right? We looked at that list of individual factors. We looked at the list of external or, things out in your home, your community. Are there one or two of those things that you could go home today? Well, you're probably already at home if you're watching this, but are there things that you could do to reduce your risk, right? Maybe it's just walking into your kitchen and deciding that you need to move a chair. Maybe you have an island and you have stools at the island, and every few days you you kick one or you stub your toe on something, right? If you're stubbing your toe on something, that might mean that item needs to be moved, right, before you do a more serious injury. Furniture placement, lighting, clutter, throw rugs, areas in the bathroom that are always seem to be wet, right? Even the surface of your tub or shower. So thinking about what can you do? And we recommend talk about this with a friend or family member, right? Say, hey, I've got these things up on the top shelf of my kitchen, and every time I need that platter, I have to get my step ladder out. It makes me very nervous to get up on my step ladder. What are your choices, right? Move the platter to lower, right? I feel like, why we don't have to use those top shelves in our kitchen. They can stay empty. They can stay blank. If it means that we don't have to get up on a step ladder and try to reach something that we, might fall. Or can somebody else get it down for you, right? That's the other thing we talk about when we talk about falls prevention is, coming to understand that we cannot do every single thing that we used to be able to do when we were much younger, and that's okay. That's normal. And, that it's okay to ask for help when you need help. Not something everyone wants to hear or is ready to hear, but something that is important to think about as we get older. And staying active. Can't emphasize this enough. By increasing and maintaining your fitness level, again, something you need to do for the rest of your life. Not only decreases your risk for any injury, decreases your risk for a fall, also decreases your recovery time. So people who are in better fitness, who have a higher fitness level, recover more quickly from an injury, whether that be a fall or some other injury. So people of all ages and all physical abilities can improve their fitness. It's just finding a class that's appropriate for you. And I think that wraps it up. So our website is listed here on this slide. We do have a lot of resources relating to falls prevention. And we also have information about those 3 programs that I mentioned, including where they're being offered currently, as well as if anyone is interested in becoming a leader or a coach in one of those programs. We offer trainings for those on a regular basis. So I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Sarah. And I will, Susan and Gail, just to let you know, I'll send you both the PowerPoint. I sent it to the group on Sunday as well. Do you have any questions or comments or anything from either of you?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Laura?
we can hear you. Yes.
Somehow I've lost all video, but I can still hear you. So anyway, I appreciate you're doing this, Sarah, because I'm one of the recent fallies, and much of what you've gone over has been there in the world that I've known, but it's good to have it put together. And frankly, it's given me some ammunition to have a couple of discussions about lighting in a couple places in our house. So I appreciate it. I really do.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, lighting is not something that you think about. It's not one of the first things people think about when they think about falls, but yeah, different times of the year, different times of the day, just walking through your home during the broad daylight, walking through your home again at night, and seeing if there are areas that do need either a lamp or stronger light bulb in lamps or lights that already exist.
Well, looks like we have in the chat here. Can you see that, Sarah, that chat
Yes,
question?
I can. Let's see. Yeah, macular degeneration, one eye, noticing more startled and peripheral vision. So I'm super careful. Is that comment? Yeah, absolutely. Any change in your vision is going to put you at an increased risk. And so it kind of comes back to that slowing down, planning, right? Sometimes it just takes a little bit more time and planning. So you're going to be going out, you're doing something. Do you need to have a friend or family member come with you, right? Are you going to, when you get to your destination, do you need an assistive device to help you walk? It's really just, and see, your comment, I'm super careful, right? That sort of leads me to think about, that fear of falling, where, sometimes you start to limit your activity because of that. And so I would just caution you about not, participating in regular exercise classes that are appropriate for you, because you don't want to lose fitness and you want to increase or at least maintain some strength and flexibility as you get older.
It's great. Sarah, thanks so much for being with us today.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure.
I'll be able
Thank
to
you.
share the link with anybody who wasn't here. And like I said, I'll email the PowerPoint to both of you as well. Yeah, we're really supportive. And if we can do anything, or you need me to write a letter to Marymount so you can continue the grant, a letter of support or anything, happy to.
Thank you. We do
that.
sometimes need those. I will add you to my list.
Yes, that's great. All right. Have a
Thank
great
you.
afternoon, everybody.
Thank you all.
So much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.